Israeli officials say the home of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was targeted by a drone attack, but he was not there at the time. The Israeli military says the drone was launched from Lebanon today and that it hit a building, but there's no confirmation it was the Prime Minister's seaside home. It was not immediately clear what the building was, and officials say 2 more drones crossed into northern Israel but were intercepted. No casualties are reported. In Gaza, health officials say at least 30 Palestinians have been killed and more than 50 injured in an Israeli strike in the region's north. Among those killed, women and children. The strike targeted the Jabalia refugee camp. Gaza officials say the death toll in the Israel-Hamas war has now surpassed 42,500. Let's bring in retired Colonel Rich Outzen, a military analyst. And Colonel, thank you very much for joining us as always.
Good to be with you.
This apparent drone attack on Prime Minister Netanyahu's residence, has this happened before, or is this Hezbollah stepping things up?
I'm not sure they've gone after Netanyahu's residence, but they've tried, for instance, to strike at the Mossad and Shin Bet headquarters that are in sort of North Tel Aviv with these precise small drones. Now, the IDF has admitted that there's some weakness with regards to its air defense against these types of targets. They're managing to intercept most of the big rockets and missiles fired by Iran and by Hezbollah and the other proxies. But it's much harder when you're talking about these low-level drones to both track them and then to shoot them down. And of course, there was a tragic death of 4 IDF soldiers last week precisely because of this. One of these drones got through to an assembly point in the northern part of Israel. So it's not really a new tactic or technique. This is the first time I think they've targeted Netanyahu's home.
Is that sending a message to Israel that Hezbollah is still ready to fight?
Yeah, I think so. Now, the resistance, of course, both from Hamas in Gaza and from Hezbollah in Lebanon, which retains much more of its capabilities than Hamas does at this point, is sort of disorganized now because they've, on both sides, both Hamas and Hezbollah have lost much of the leadership cadres that were there to direct their military or militant efforts. I think Hezbollah's still got a lot of rockets. They've got Iranian advisors and sponsors. So, yes, I think they're showing there's still fight there. They're still willing to go after high-level targets, and that Israel does not have an easy cakewalk ahead of it in southern Lebanon.
Now, will Israel take special interest in this attack on or the apparent attack on the Prime Minister's house, or are they just going to continue with their plan?
Yeah, I don't think the Israelis will give too much more importance to this than the ongoing attacks, for instance, on the small towns of the kibbutzim and moshavim in northern Israel. I mean, that's really the political pressure that Netanyahu and the government have responded to here. It's been almost a year now that the people in the northern communities in Israel have not been able to live a normal life, and in many cases have relocated. So a large portion of their country has been made unlivable by the sustained Hezbollah attacks. I think it's one of those things where they're like, yeah, okay, you tried to get me, you missed. An assassination attempt, if you will, or it's more of a symbolic value from Hezbollah's perspective. But from the Israeli perspective, look, the offense is not going after Netanyahu's house. The offense is making large swaths of the country unlivable.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about Gaza. Israel and Hamas both saying this war is not over.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is when you have a symbolic action like the death of Sinwar, it does provide a pivot point. I think the people of Gaza and most Israelis pretty much feel like this war should wind down in Gaza. Most of Hamas's military capabilities have been destroyed. Sinwar, who was one of the, along with Mohammed Daif, one of the co-architects of the October 7th, 2023 attacks on Israel, being killed presents an opportunity now for both sides to say, perhaps there can be a sustained ceasefire and de-escalation here. The requirement for that, though, the prerequisite, is that there be a political vision for what comes next. What will be the point of negotiations? And unfortunately, we have yet to see either Hamas say, you know, we're ready to move away from this Iranian axis and something better from the Palestinian side in Gaza, nor from Israel to say, you know, we're ready to entertain some alternative and better political future for Gaza as well. Until those acts of political vision occur, then this will remain a potential rather than an actual pivot to a ceasefire.
Okay, Colonel, thank you as always for your insight and analysis. Appreciate it.